Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I am here with my video for the 70th Emmy Awards nominations. We're getting close to Emmy time, and I figure I better get this out now before it's too late. The Emmy Awards are actually split into two ceremonies. There's the Creative Arts ceremony, as well as on Monday, September 17th. That's the main ceremony, which will be on NBC and will be hosted by Michael Che and Colin Yost. Now, a few of these categories will be presented in the Creative Arts telecast, like the guest acting categories, as well as some of the variety categories. But I usually put them in here along with the categories that are presented on the main telecast, because they are big categories that relate to acting, writing, directing, etc. Now, I can't present all Emmy categories in this video because there's literally over 100 of them, which is why you have the two separate ceremonies. So I'm just going to be going over the main categories in like comedy, drama, limited series, etc., and mainly focusing on things like acting, writing, and directing, because those are what we usually see on the main telecast. Because they're split all across the board for comedy, drama, limited series in terms of all the different types of categories, whereas at other ceremonies like the Oscars, you only have like one cinematography and one editing category, and that's it, you know. So I'm going to go over the categories that I have here, as well as give my thoughts on them afterwards. So we'll start off with the comedy categories. Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series: Louis Anderson, Baskets; Alec Baldwin, Saturday Night Live; Titus Burgess, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt; Brian Tyree Henry, Atlanta; Tony Shalhoub, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel; Kenan Thompson, Saturday Night Live; Henry Winkler, Barry. Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series: Zazie Beetz, Atlanta; Alex Borstein, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel; Aida Bryant, Saturday Night Live; Betty Gilpin, Glow; Leslie Jones, Saturday Night Live; Kate McKinnon, Saturday Night Live; Laurie Metcalf, Roseanne; Megan Mullally, Will and Grace. Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series: Anthony Anderson, Blackish; Ted Danson, The Good Place; Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm; Donald Glover, Atlanta; Bill Hader, Barry; William H. Macy, Shameless. Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series: Pamela Adlon, Better Things; Rachel Brosnahan, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel; Allison Janney, Mom; Issa Rae, Insecure; Tracy Ellis Ross, Blackish; Lily Tomlin, Grace and Frankie. Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series: Sterling K. Brown, Brooklyn Nine-Nine; Bryan Cranston, Curb Your Enthusiasm; Donald Glover, Saturday Night Live; Bill Hader, Saturday Night Live; Lin-Manuel Miranda, Curb Your Enthusiasm; Cat Williams, Atlanta. Outstanding Guest Actress in a Comedy Series: Tina Fey, Saturday Night Live; Tiffany Haddish, Saturday Night Live; Jane Lynch, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel; Maya Rudolph, The Good Place; Molly Shannon, Will and Grace; Wanda Sykes, Blackish. Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series. I forgot to mention at the start of the video that writing and directing categories, especially for comedy and drama series, usually focus on a specific episode, whereas in the variety series, the writing goes to the whole team for the whole show, and directing is just one episode, whereas for limited series and TV movies, if it's a TV movie, obviously it's for the whole thing. With limited series, sometimes it's for the whole thing, sometimes for a specific episode. Just want to point that out in case this is anyone's first time watching an Emmy nominations video. Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series: Donald Glover, Atlanta, Alligator Man; Stephanie Robinson, Atlanta, Barbershop; Alec Berg and Bill Hader, Barry, Chapter 1, Make Your Mark; Liz Sarnoff, Barry, Chapter 7, Loud, Fast, and Keep Going; Amy Sherman Palladino, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Pilot; Alec Berg, Silicon Valley, 51%. Outstanding Directing for a Comedy Series. Donald Glover, Atlanta, FUBU. Hiro Murai, Atlanta, Teddy Perkins. Bill Hader, Barry, Chapter 1, Make Your Mark. Mark Sandrowski, The Big Bang Theory, The Bow Tie Asymmetry. Jesse Peretz, Glow, Pilot. Amy Sherman Palladino, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Pilot. Mike Judge, Silicon Valley, Initial Coin Offering. Outstanding Comedy Series. Atlanta, Barry, Blackish, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Glow, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Silicon Valley, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Now onto the variety categories. Outstanding Writing for a Variety Series. Melinda Taub, Samantha Bee, Pat Cassells, Mike Drucker, Eric Drysdale, Nathan Earhart, Trayvon Free, Miles Kahn, Nicole Silverberg, Ashley Nicole Black, and Joe Grossman. Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. John Oliver, Tim Carvel, Raquel DePeace, Josh Gondelman, Dan Gerwich, Jeff Haggerty, Jeff Moorer, Brian Parise, Scott Sherman, Ben Silva, Will Tracy, Jill Twiss, Sina Volley, and Julie Weiner. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Jermaine Afonso, Alex Bays, Brian Donaldson, Sal Gentile, Matt Goldich, Dina Gusovsky, Jenny Hagel, Allison Horde, Mike Carnell, John Lutz, Seth Meyers, Ian Morgan, Seth Rice, Amber Ruffin, Mike Scollins, Mike Shoemaker, and Ben Warheit. Late Night with Seth Meyers. Jay Katzer, Opus Moreshi, Michael Brum, Nate Charney, Aaron Cohen, Stephen Colbert, Cullen Crawford, Paul Danello, Ariel Dumas, Glenn Eichler, Django Gold, Gabe Gronley, Barry Julian, Daniel Kibblesmith, Matt Lappin, Michael Pilachek, Tom Purcell, Kate Sidley, Jen Spira, Brian Stack, and John Thibodeau. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Michael Che, Colin Yost, Kent Sublette, Brian Tucker, James Anderson, Stephen Castillo, Andrew Dismukes, Megan Callahan, Anna Drazen, Claire Friedman, Steve Higgins, Sam J., Eric Kenward, Michael Coman, Dave McCary, Dennis McNicholas, Lorne Michaels, Nimesh Patel, Josh Patton, Katie Rich, Gary Richardson, Pete Schultz, Will Steven, Julio Torres, Stephen Glover, Jamal Alori, Tim Kalpakis, Eric Marino, Fran Gillespie, Sudie Green, and Streeter Seidel. Saturday Night Live. Outstanding Directing for a Variety Series. Andre Allen, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, Episode 2061. Paul Penolino, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, Episode 421. Tim Mancinelli, The Late Late Show with James Corden, Episode 0416. Jim Hoskinson, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Episode 438. Carrie Brownstein, Portlandia, Riot Spray. Don Roy King, Saturday Night Live, host Donald Glover. Outstanding Variety Sketch Series. At Home with Amy Sedaris. Drunk History. I Love You America with Sarah Silverman. Portlandia. Saturday Night Live, Tracy Ullman Show. Outstanding Variety Talk Series. The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. Jimmy Kimmel Live. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. The Late Late Show with James Corden. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Outstanding Host for a reality competition program. W. Kamau Bell. United Shades of America with W. Kamau Bell. RuPaul Charles, RuPaul's Drag Race. Ellen DeGeneres, Ellen's Game of Games. Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn, Project Runway. Jane Lynch, Hollywood Game Night. Outstanding Reality Competition Program. The Amazing Race. American Ninja Warrior. Project Runway. RuPaul's Drag Race. Top Chef. The Voice. And now onto the limited series / TV movie categories. Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Limited Series or Movie. Jeff Daniels, Godless. Brandon Victor Dixon, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in Concert. John Leguizamo, Waco. Ricky Martin, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Edgar Ramirez, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Michael Stuhlbarg, The Looming Tower. Finn Wittrock, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Limited Series or Movie. Sarah Bareilles, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in Concert. Penelope Cruz, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Judith Light, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Adina Porter, American Horror Story Cult. Merritt Weaver, Godless. Letitia Wright, Black Mirror, Black Museum. Outstanding Lead Actor in a Limited Series or Movie. Antonio Banderas, Genius Picasso. Darren Criss, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Benedict Cumberbatch, Patrick Melrose. Jeff Daniels, The Looming Tower. John Legend, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in Concert. Jesse Plemons, Black Mirror, USS Callister. Outstanding Lead Actress in a Limited Series or Movie. Jessica Biel, The Sinner. Laura Dern, The Tale. Michelle Dockery, Godless. Edie Falco, Law and Order True Crime, The Menendez Murders. Regina King, 7 Seconds. Sarah Paulson, American Horror Story Cult. Outstanding Writing for a Limited Series or Movie. Kevin McManus and Matthew McManus, American Vandal, Cleanup. Tom Rob Smith, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story, House by the Lake. William Bridges and Charlie Brooker, Black Mirror, USS Callister. Scott Frank, Godless. David Nichols, Patrick Melrose. David Lynch and Mark Frost, Twin Peaks: The Return. Outstanding Directing for a Limited Series or Movie. Ryan Murphy, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story, The Man Who Would Be Vogue. Scott Frank, Godless. David Laveau and Alex Rudzinski, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in Concert. Craig Zisk, The Looming Tower, 9/11. Barry Levinson, Paterno. Edward Berger, Patrick Melrose. David Lynch, Twin Peaks: The Return. Outstanding Limited Series. The Alienist, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. Genius Picasso. Godless, Patrick Melrose. Outstanding Television Movie. Black Mirror, USS Callister. Fahrenheit 451. Flint. Paterno. The Tale. And now onto the drama categories. Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Game of Thrones. Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones. Joseph Fiennes, The Handmaid's Tale. David Harbour, Stranger Things. Mandy Patinkin, Homeland. Matt Smith, The Crown. Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Drama Series. Alexis Bledel, The Handmaid's Tale. Millie Bobby Brown, Stranger Things. Ann Dowd, The Handmaid's Tale. Lena Headey, Game of Thrones. Vanessa Kirby, The Crown. Tandy Newton, Westworld. Yvonne Strahovski, The Handmaid's Tale. Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series. Jason Bateman, Ozark. Sterling K. Brown, This Is Us. Ed Harris, Westworld. Matthew Rhys, The Americans. Milo Ventimiglia, This Is Us. Jeffrey Wright, Westworld. Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series. Claire Foy, The Crown. Tatiana Maslany, Orphan Black. Elizabeth Moss, The Handmaid's Tale. Sandra Oh, Killing Eve. Carrie Russell, The Americans. Evan Rachel Wood, Westworld. Outstanding Guest Actor in a Drama Series. F. Murray Abraham, Homeland. Cameron Britton, Mindhunter. Matthew Good, The Crown. Ron Cephas Jones, This Is Us. Gerald McRaney, This Is Us. Jimmy Simpson, Westworld. Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series, Viola Davis, Scandal. Kelly Jenrette, The Handmaid's Tale. Cherry Jones, The Handmaid's Tale. Diana Rigg, Game of Thrones. Cicely Tyson, How to Get Away with Murder. Samira Wiley, The Handmaid's Tale. Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series, Joel Fields and Joe Weisberg, The Americans, Start. Peter Morgan, The Crown, Mystery Man. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, Game of Thrones, The Dragon and the Wolf. Bruce Miller, The Handmaid's Tale, June. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Killing Eve, Nice Face. Matt Duffer and Ross Duffer, Stranger Things, Chapter 9, The Gate. Outstanding Directing for a Drama Series, Stephen Daldry, The Crown, Pater Familias. Alan Taylor, Game of Thrones, Beyond the Wall. Jeremy Podeswa, Game of Thrones, The Dragon and the Wolf. Carrie Scogland, The Handmaid's Tale, After. Jason Bateman, Ozark, The Toll. Daniel Sackheim, Ozark, Tonight We Improvise. Matt Duffer and Ross Duffer, Stranger Things, Chapter 9, The Gate. And finally, Outstanding Drama Series, The Americans, The Crown, Game of Thrones, The Handmaid's Tale, Stranger Things, This Is Us, Westworld. And those are the nominations for the 70th Emmy Awards, at least in the major categories. Now, I haven't seen every single TV show, so I'm not really going to be able to offer a lot of analysis of what I like and don't like personally. But I'll be going through what's been considered surprises or snubs, at least by the industry and by critics and fans, etc., as well as talk about some interesting records and achievements that have been set through these nominations. So overall, in the comedy categories, Atlanta and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel performed as expected. Many people expected them to get lots of nominations for acting, writing, directing, etc., and they certainly did. And Atlanta certainly doubled its haul from last year. Last year, I think it only had 6 nominations. Now it has 16. And Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is close behind with 14. And they're pretty much considered neck and neck in terms of winning Best Outstanding Comedy Series. So it's going to be like a real nail-biter until the winner is actually announced. And then Barry certainly overperformed everyone's expectations. It was widely considered to at least probably get a comedy series nomination and comedy actor for Bill Hader and possibly a supporting actor for Henry Winkler. And it certainly got all those, but then it got multiple writing nominations, a directing nomination, a lot of below-the-line nominations, so it's done a lot better than most people have predicted it would. So good for that, and I love Bill Hader, he's hilarious. Saturday Night Live, of course, doing very well. Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones are back, and since Vanessa Bayer left the show after last year, which was her final season, she was nominated last year. This time they have Aida Bryant. I think that's how you say her first name. I'm not sure. I don't watch Saturday Night Live all the time, so I can't really say if Aida Bryant's deserving, but I'm at least glad they have Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones. Blackish, more or less, has done about the same as it did before. It doesn't really get too many nominations outside of the big ones, like a few below-the-line nominations here and there, but you got a lot of the same nominations like comedy series, Anthony Anderson, Tracee Ellis Ross, Wanda Sykes got in again for guest actress, but no writing or directing nominations, which it still has not gotten to this day, and that's a shame because they've had several great episodes that would have been worthy of those honors. Curb Your Enthusiasm's back, because it always gets in even if it takes a break for several years. It doesn't really have anything outside the main categories, but there's certainly big ones. Glow got quite a number of nominations, comedy series, Betty Gilpin directing, but there were 2 big snubs, at least according to many, and that was Alison Brie for lead actress and Mark Maron for supporting actor. Both of them were seen as locks for nominations, but surprisingly they're not here. And then, of course, there was the big question of how would the big revivals like Roseanne and Will and Grace do here, because they may have been bringing in the ratings, but it looks like here they haven't really impressed Emmy voters all that much. Maybe they just feel, well, they were nominated and won several times in the past, we don't really need to do it again, because everyone was expecting all four of the main Will and Grace cast members to be nominated, but they only have Megan Mullally here. And in the case of Roseanne, that was a bit of a different scenario, because first there was the debate of whether or not Roseanne Barr herself would be nominated because of her real-life support of Donald Trump and the character support of Donald Trump as well, and whether that would be a turnoff to Emmy voters. But then following her racist tweets about Valerie Jarrett, which led to the show's cancellation, pretty much everyone thought the show was dead in the water, including myself. And so I was a bit surprised to see that Laurie Metcalf still got a nomination, but I guess since Jackie is the more liberal one of the family, and because Laurie Metcalf's had a very stellar year with her Oscar nomination for Lady Bird and her second Tony win for the Broadway revival of Three Tall Women, and she had also won a Tony last year for A Doll's House Part 2, I guess voters just wanted to keep her riding the wave of. And I'm back. And as I was saying about Laurie Metcalf before my battery ran out of power a couple days ago on my camera, she was the only cast member of Roseanne during its run in the 90s to have won an Emmy. She won 3 consecutive times in the same category of supporting actress in a comedy series in 1992, 1993, and 1994. So that could possibly help her win again, although I honestly don't think it will this time, but who knows. Now moving on to the variety series category. You know, we got a lot of the same players, especially in the writing and directing, like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, Jimmy Kimmel Live, Late Night with Seth Meyers, Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Saturday Night Live, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. Although with the sketch series we have 2 nominations, which I guess are for new shows, At Home with Amy Sedaris and I Love You America with Sarah Silverman, and those are literally those shows' only nominations. But since they split the variety series into sketch versus talk, that gives it a smaller field of options to choose from for each category. And also, of course, Late Late Show with James Corden, and the reality competition program, pretty much the same as always. And as for the limited series or movie categories, Ryan Murphy, of course, is back. He's always been in this category pretty much every year for the last couple of years with all the various seasons of American Horror Story, because even though he uses a lot of the same cast members, it's a different concept each season. Then he was also here with the TV movie The Normal Heart, which won TV movie and I think a makeup award, and then Nothing Else, which was very controversial. And then, of course, he practically swept through this category several years ago with the first installment of American Crime Story, which was The People vs. O.J. Simpson, which won a ton of awards. And it looks like he's probably going to do the same again with the next installment of American Crime Story, which is the assassination of Gianni Versace. And of course, as the title implies, this is about the events leading up to the assassination of iconic fashion designer Gianni Versace, who was killed by serial killer Andrew Cunanan. I mean, Darren Criss, talk about a complete transformation for him since he plays Andrew Cunanan. I mean, of course, Darren Criss is well known to everybody, not only for his role as Blaine on Glee, but even before Glee, he was, of course, Harry Potter in the hit YouTube musical, A Harry Potter Musical, which he and his theater friends from when he was in college created. And if you've not yet seen A Harry Potter Musical, go watch it because it is hilarious. It's a brilliant parody of all 7 Harry Potter books, and it's got some fantastic songs too. Some songs that are probably a lot better than a lot of the songs that are in actual Broadway musicals right now. So if Darren Criss wanted to be like a full-time theater composer, I think he'd have a very successful career at that. But, with this role, this is a complete transformation because he's playing a very deranged psychopath serial killer, and just like, wow. And he'd actually be one of the youngest ever winners in the category too. I think he'd be the second youngest winner, because the youngest winner was 17 way back in the 1970s. I can't think of his name at the top of my head. I'll probably put it in the video once I'm in the editing process. I know his first name was Anthony, the youngest ever winner. I just don't remember what his last name is. And maybe this time Ryan Murphy can also win, not just for producing, but also directing, because he looked like he could possibly win, or he and the other two directors who were nominated for People vs. O.J. Simpson 2 years ago, but because there were 3 of them nominated, that probably caused a vote split and allowed the actual winner, The Night Manager, to prevail. But this time, The Assassination of Gianni Versace only has 1 directing nomination, and that's for Ryan Murphy. And with having just 1 nomination, that probably gives him a greater chance to prevail. Godless, of course, is also a strong contender. Got a lot of great stars in it, like Michelle Dockery, Jeff Daniels, Jack O'Connell, Merritt Wever. Kind of a feminist take on the Western genre. And it's written and directed by Scott Frank, who earlier this year got an Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay for Logan. Jesus Christ Superstar, live in concert. The biggest ever live musical contender, because live musicals have been kind of hit or miss, both with critics and with awards. You had some that were a success, like Grease Live won several awards, including the now defunct Special Class program, which is now split into Variety Special Live and Variety Special Pre-Recorded. But others have only picked up wins for like costumes, hairstyling, lighting design, etc. But Jesus Christ Superstar, even though it was basically just a concert with all the people singing the various roles, it wasn't like a full-scale musical production like, say, Sound of Music or Peter Pan or The Wiz or Hairspray or Grease. It still received a lot of positive reviews from critics and audiences, and as a result, we have not 1, not 2, but 3 acting nominations, which has never happened for these live musical events before. To some extent, Brandon Victor Dixon's nomination isn't really a surprise, because a lot of people were predicting him to possibly get a nomination, since he was the most widely praised performer. But Sarah Bareilles, her nomination was a complete surprise, and to some extent John Legend as well. And of course, this has the potential possibility to make Andrew Lloyd Webber, Tim Rice, and John Legend all EGOT winners, which means they've won Emmys, Grammys, Oscars, and Tonys, if this should win Best Variety Special. Although, having it compete as a variety special, but and also putting it here in these categories, it's a bit of a interesting paradox. And also having it nominated for directing for a limited series or movie when it's a variety special, that kind of comes across as category fraud to me. But the Emmys don't really have specific rules about these kinds of things. Patrick Melrose certainly did pretty well compared to the others, because there haven't been like a lot of huge, strong miniseries and TV movies. But, it did get a lot of the top nominations, like acting, writing, directing, etc. And Benedict Cumberbatch, he's creeping up amongst the record for all-time nominations for miniseries or TV movie acting. But then you have The Looming Tower, which underperformed to many people's expectations. It certainly got some expected nominations, like Jeff Daniels and Michael Stuhlbarg, and Jeff Daniels, of course, is also nominated for Godless, but in Godless he's supporting, while in Looming Tower he's lead, but it didn't get a limited series nomination, so that's going to limit its chances. And also Twin Peaks underperformed to many people's expectations. Got several technical nominations, as well as writing and directing, but no acting nominations for people like Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern, or a limited series nomination. And maybe David Lynch could pull off a directing win just out of respect for his overall cinematic legacy, but given that Twin Peaks is very mind-bending, that could turn some voters off, I think. And then also, of course, Black Mirror continues to be big. You know, it pulled off a win last year for TV movie, as many expected, and also a surprise win for limited series or movie writing. But now it's back with several nominations, not only including movie, but also an acting nomination for Jesse Plemons, specifically for the movie USS Callister. Because there's another Black Mirror movie, Black Museum, which got a nomination for Letitia Wright. Although, of course, with Black Mirror, there might be some controversy of whether or not they should be counted as individual TV movies, because it's one episode has a completely different storyline with different actors, different set, different plot, etc. And some people might feel that could constitute as category fraud by placing it as a TV movie. But then again, the Emmys don't really get into too much specifics about when it comes to limited series episodes, what can count as a TV movie and what can't. And then Paterno was expected to be a big contender, but came up short, getting nominations for TV, movie, and directing, but nothing for lead star Al Pacino. And also Flint got a nomination for TV, movie, but nothing else. Not even big stars like Queen Latifah could pull off a nomination, which is a shame considering Flint's timely subject matter about the Flint, Michigan water crisis. And then Genius Picasso didn't get as many nominations as the first Genius, which explored Albert Einstein, but certainly got a lot of technical nominations as well as series and an acting nomination for Antonio Banderas. But surprisingly, The Alienist got in, because that came out way back in January and received, decent reviews, I guess. But considering it went so far back, not too many people were really predicting it to be nominated for anything major. But I guess it had a certain degree of star power with Daniel Bruhl, Luke Evans, and Dakota Fanning, so The Tale also underperformed to people's expectations. It did get a nomination for TV movie and Best Actress for Laura Dern, but because of its heavy subject matter, I guess people didn't feel a need to be nominated beyond those. But Laura Dern is seen as the favorite to win lead actress because it deals with sexual abuse, and of course that's very timely given the current Me Too movement going on. And then also in lead actress you have some surprise nominations as well with Edie Falco and Regina King, and they're literally the only nominations for their shows. And American Horror Story still seems to be doing well, because, at least for acting, because it's kind of fallen off Emmy radar in the last few years with not a lot of acting nominations or limited series nominations, but the Emmys still really love Sarah Paulson because she got nominated here, and even her co-star Adina Porter got nominated as well. And then also, of course, in TV movie you have the critically slammed Fahrenheit 451. Did not get good reviews from critics at all, but I guess because of slim pickings in terms of what you could nominate for TV movie this year, as well as the fact that it's based on an iconic novel and has some degree of star power with Michael B. Jordan, Michael Shannon, and Sophia Boutella, I guess it was too impossible to resist. Just kind of like Grace of Monaco a couple of years ago, which got a TV movie nomination even though it was beyond god-awful, with the exception of Nicole Kidman, who was the saving grace. And then for the drama categories, The Handmaid's Tale really doubled its nominations this year. Got a lot of the same categories as last year, but also several more. Acting nominations all across the board, to all the right players, not just people we had nominated last year like Elizabeth Moss, Ann Dowd, Alexis Bledel, who's now moved from guest to supporting, and Samira Wiley, who ironically has now moved from supporting to guest, but also some more nominations for people who weren't nominated last year, like Joseph Fiennes, Yvonne Strahovski, and then also several guest nominations like Cherry Jones and Kelly Jenrette. Game of Thrones certainly back in a big way with nominations for the people who've been nominated before, like Peter Dinklage and Lena Headey, but now we have Nikolai Coster-Waldau getting his first nomination, but other contenders from the past like Emilia Clarke, Sophie Turner, Maisie Williams, they're not nominated this time around. Stranger Things, of course, is back. Maybe not as many nominations as last year, but still got big nominations for series, writing, directing. We got a supporting and acting nominations for Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour. The Crown certainly got a lot more nominations this time around, probably because this is the last time we're going to be seeing the current incarnation in the cast, because the plan for The Crown is for it to be a 6-season series, and every 2 seasons they recast all the major roles to reflect the characters when they get older. So the first 2 seasons have been about a young Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, Princess Margaret, and now the next 2 seasons will feature them in middle age, and in the first 2 seasons they were played by Claire Foy, Matt Smith, Vanessa Kirby, and in the upcoming 2 seasons they'll be played by Olivia Colman, Tobias Menzies, and Helena Bonham Carter. So for the younger cast members, this is the last chance for any of them to be honored, and Claire Foy is back this year, but now we also have Matt Smith and Vanessa Kirby nominated as well, and maybe they'll win as like a goodbye present. And of course Westworld is back as well, with nominations for all the major players, such as Jeffrey Wright, who's now moved from supporting to lead, Ed Harris, who was not nominated last year, and also people like Tandy Newton and Evan Rachel Wood. I have not seen Westworld, so I can't really say anything too much about it, although I've heard it's deserving of nominations across the board, although some people I know find it a very confusing show. I do know that it was created by Christopher Nolan's brother, Jonathan Nolan, so that's pretty cool. The Americans, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that show, because it took forever for it to get on the Emmys radar, and even when it did get nominations, it would only get a couple acting nominations, a few series nominations, and some writing nominations, but nothing ever below the line in like cinematography, editing, costumes, hairstyling, makeup, etc. It'll be interesting to see if it can still pull off any major wins despite no below the line nominations. It of course got 2 very controversial guest acting wins for Margot Martindale, because both times she won she only had like a minute to 2 minutes of screen time, which some people felt was counted as category fraud. But who knows? I mean, I guess great acting is great acting no matter how long the screen time is. But it'll be interesting to see whether or not real-life anti-Russian sentiment will affect voting here, because The Americans, keep in mind, is a show about Russian spies working against America, and they're living in America, posing as Americans, while they commit spy work for the Soviet Union, because this is set in the 1980s. So some voters may feel that it's wrong to vote for a show where you're forced to root for the enemy. And of course, right now, U.S.-Russian relations are not very good, although of course Donald Trump likes to praise Vladimir Putin a lot, even though Vladimir Putin is not exactly what you would call a great political leader. This Is Us is once again back, although not as many nominations this time. No, Chrissy Metz is not nominated like she was last year, but we still have nominations for Sterling K. Brown and Milo Ventimiglia, and Gerald McRaney is back as guest, and Ron Cephas Jones has had to move from supporting to guest given what happened to his character. But sadly, there were no expansion of nominations for the actors like we all thought there would be. No Mandy Moore nomination, which is frankly a travesty, because she had a wide number of episodes that she could have submitted as her tape had she actually been nominated, and she was definitely deserving of a nomination. Chrissy Metz, of course, should have gotten nominated again, and Justin Hartley, too. I mean, his character arc this past season, I mean, wow. I mean, if that wasn't worthy of an Emmy nomination, then I don't know what is. But of course, network shows have fallen out of favor in recent years. Many of them aren't that good anymore, and This Is Us is like the one good exception to the rule. But it's a shame that they couldn't expand upon that this year, because they really deserve to. And then of course we have some history with Killing Eve. It only got 2 nominations, but they were big ones. One of them being for Sandra Oh, who is now the very first Asian actress ever nominated for lead actress in a drama series. And it's sad that it took 70 years for that to happen, but given the problems Hollywood has had with diversity over its long history, it's sadly not surprising either. But, better late than never, I guess. And congratulations to her, by the way. And also another record not related to race, but what I forgot to mention earlier with Game of Thrones is that Peter Dinklage, with his nomination, is now the most nominated actor ever for the category of supporting actor in a drama series. This is his 7th nomination for the show, and he's been nominated every single season of the show so far, and I'm sure he'll probably be nominated for the 8th season when it premieres next year. Of course, that depends on when it premieres, because if it premieres beyond June 1st of next year, then it's going to have to wait until the 2020 Emmys to be recognized. And then one nomination that's surprising, although I guess maybe not so surprising, I guess it would depend on where you see it, is Jason Bateman for Ozark. Not that his nomination was too much of a shock, as he did get nominated for a Screen Actors Guild Award earlier this year, and the Screen Actors Guild Award can often indicate what will get nominated at the Emmys later on. But it was kind of surprising because this came right after his controversial New York Times interview with his Arrested Development castmates, because of course Arrested Development was revived again for another season after being first revived 5 years ago, and while they were promoting it with the New York Times during the interview, they were talking about the Me Too movement, and Jessica Walter talked about how her co-star and on-screen husband Jeffrey Tambor once verbally harassed her on the set during an argument, and she said it was the worst professional experience of her career. And Jason Bateman and the rest of his male co-stars jumped in to defend Jeffrey Tambor and basically gaslit poor Jessica Walter, basically trying to demean and invalidate her experience. And they got blasted on social media for it. And Jason Bateman and his castmates did apologize, and I figured that would be enough damage for him to be snubbed, but apparently not. But still, Bateman ought not to have invalidated her experience by trying to excuse it as, oh, that's just what people do sometimes. Because having arguments is one thing, but yelling at someone to the point of harassing them, that's quite another. And Jeffrey Tambor has long had a history of being verbally abusive to co-stars. It's something that's dogged his reputation for a long time, and it's part of the reason, along with sexual harassment charges, of why he got fired from his show Transparent earlier this year. And those are my take on the Emmy Awards. I'm sorry I couldn't really provide a deeper analysis if you were looking for it, but given the fact that it's taken me days to make this video from what happened during the first time I was making it, and also the fact that there are so many shows nominated, I literally haven't seen them all, I can't always provide an in-depth analysis as I can with things like the Golden Globes, the SAGs, and especially the Oscars, because those are always my favorites out of everything else. But since the Emmys are coming up in a few days, let me know in the comment section below what you think of the nominations. What are your favorites, and what do you think got snubbed? And I will be back hopefully sometime next week, although if I get busy it might be a couple weeks later, but I'll try to get my thoughts on the ceremony and winners out as soon as possible. So I'll be back with my thoughts on the winners and the ceremony itself as soon as I can. And until then, I will see you guys next time. Bye!